Hello my darlings, and welcome to the very first episode of the home channel that I'll be sharing with you guys all of my cooking recipes, home decorating ideas, and elegant ideas for entertaining. So I'm very excited to share with you guys one of my favorite things for Thanksgiving, which is an apple pie, which my grandmother taught me how to make when I was growing up, so I'll be sharing with you guys how I did it. Okay, so first thing is you can't make an apple pie or any pie without making your own crust. So it's actually a lot easier than you think. So we're going to start off with flour, and we're going to take 2 cups. I think there's always a huge difference when you make the crust yourself versus store-bought one. And I know a lot of people get really intimidated to make a pie crust, but it's actually a lot simpler than one would think. I remember when my grandma taught me how to do this. I think I was about 10, 11. I don't know how old I was. But she was like, okay, it's time for you guys to learn how to make pie. I think grandma was tired of making them herself all the time. And we want to sift this, so let's put some through our sifter. Just put our and then we're gonna put a little salt. Just mix this together. Another trick that my grandma did was don't touch it. So best time when making pie crust. The next thing we're gonna add is put our shortening in. I just sort of spread it evenly throughout the bowl, and then we'll sort of cut it in also, same way we were doing before with the fork. And this work can sometimes take a little bit of time, especially if you're in a really dry climate. But basically what you're going to want to do is keep adding water until this mixture kind of clumps together. And once it's like you can kind of form it into a ball, it's ready. You can already see how it's been raining a lot lately, so a lot of moisture there, so it's already starting to clump together. But there have been times I've made this, like my parents have a place in Arizona, and so the air is very dry there. So those times sometimes you seem like you're adding a ridiculous amount of water, but the amount of water you add always just depends on the day you're making the pie crust. You don't want to add too much because you don't want it to be sticky, but you don't want it to be so dry that it won't stick together. So see, it's starting to come together, but we definitely need some more water. So I'm gonna add in probably 2 more tablespoons, just because you'll get the hang of this too as you do more and more pie crusts. But definitely less is more, so start off with less. You can always add. Once you put too much, it's really hard to undo it. So it's not so clumpy anymore, and it's starting to sort of come together, and I can sort of form it into a ball. This is really good. I think this is plenty of water. I put, I believe, 6 or 7 tablespoons in. Yeah, see how I can actually like push it in together? This is perfect. So now I'm going to start forming it into a ball. And then we will divide this into two. So each time you make this, it does make the top and the bottom for your pie, or makes two bottoms depending on what kind of pie you are making. So an apple pie, we need a top and a bottom. So this will be our pie crust for just apple pie. So I'm gonna move this over here, and then I'm gonna take a little bit of extra flour and I'm gonna put it on my rolling pin. So now we want to roll out the pie crust. And see how it's not sticking to the rolling pin? That is because we put just the right amount of water in. This little piece here. But if it's really sticking to your rolling pin, you probably put too much water in and then just add some extra like light dusting of flour. And you want to just kind of keep rolling this out. You want it on the thinner side, not too thin, but thinner. So I think this should be the right size. And don't worry about that it's not like a beautiful shape yet, because once we get it into the pie pan, we can mold it. I usually just lightly cook these just because sometimes it can stick when you bake it. And don't worry too much about it being perfect when you put it in here. I always find this part the harder part to make the right shape, because obviously when you're folding it, it starts to crumble a little bit. We have to mend it. So you're gonna just make sure you kind of press this into the corners of this pie dish. Also, deeper dish pie crusts are harder because this is a lot more shape to create. So then we have the basic shape of the crust, and this is what we're going to use to sort of band-aid these little bits. So just sort of press them into the edge, and don't worry too much about touching it now because we have a basic shape, and nobody's going to see this bit anyways because it will be cooked. Filling, you're going to want a bunch of apples. Really, there's no number. It's just as many as you need to fill your pie pan. So if you're doing a deep dish one, you're gonna need more. If it's shallow, obviously less. I like to use Granny Smith apples. It was the one that my grandma always suggested because it has a nice tartness to the pie. Because it's usually very sweet. So having that little bit of that tartness is a nice combo. This being my least favorite part and the most tedious part, I'm gonna use a little cooking magic to get all these apples. Now that all of our apples are peeled, before we can begin slicing them, let's preheat our oven. So we are going to set our oven to 450 degrees. And we'll let that just warm up in the background while we stuff our pie. So now that your apples are all sliced, you are going to want to take out the cores. So it's just kind of easier just to my darlings, now that we have all of the apples sliced, we need to prepare the sugar cinnamon that's also going to be going into the pie with the apples. So we're going to take 2/3 cup of sugar. And this is just raw sugar, so most apples but it's just regular sugar. I think it tastes better. And what we're going to do with the apples is, another reason why I use this thin is we're going to because nobody wants a lumpy slice of pie. And you don't have to make it perfectly pretty like this inside, but I think if you take the time to arrange them nicely, you actually are able to fit a lot more apples into the pie and look something like this. And then we're going to take our cinnamon and sugar mixture. And I just like to layer this on every layer. I just cover this, and be generous with this. We are going to use this whole thing. And then start the next layer. And then just keep repeating this until you have used all of your apples and it is overflowing. That's what we want. We want a overflowing apple pie. Right? And again. See how full it is? You want it to be like this, because it'll flatten out once you cook it. So let's use the last of our sugar and cinnamon. And just use all of it. Don't leave any behind. You can't overdo the sugar and cinnamon on apple pie. And then you're gonna get lemon. And then you're gonna just squeeze this over the top. Make sure you get everywhere. Then the last thing before we put the top on is you want some butter. Take about roughly like 2 tablespoons. So with this, go ahead and slice it. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're gonna just make it in little cubes. And then we're gonna just place this around our pie. So now we need the topper for our pie. And let's hope this doesn't break as we fold it over. Almost came out perfect. Don't worry if there's a little bit like this one that broke a tiny bit. Once you bake it, usually you can't even see it anyways. I remember when my grandma was teaching me how to do this, I was like, oh my god, this is so hard to do on the edges. And the more you do this, the easier it becomes, but you're baking these once a year. It's not the end of the world. There's a lot of extra, just trim it. Start folding this. Then, next little thing is you're gonna sort of like pinch it. This should look sort of like this when it's finished. Before we put it into the oven, and take a little bit more of the butter and melt this. And brush the top, and this is gonna make the top of your pie super, super pretty. Pastry brush. So just take your melted butter and brush it over the top of the pie. And when this bakes, this is going to make this like a really beautiful. Don't forget to put some holes in the top of your pie. I love to draw little designs in the top. It's because it's fun. Now you have a little diamond. You can put all sorts of designs. The next step is we're going to want to put this in the oven, and we've already preheated our oven for 450, so you're only going to use the 450 for the first 10 minutes. Is before we put this in the oven, you're going to want to take some aluminum foil, and because pies especially apple, can spill over. So to save yourself a lot of cleanup, you're going to want to line the bottom of your oven with food foil. And this just makes cleanup so much easier. You're ready to put our pie in the oven. So we're going to do this for 10 minutes and then we're going to lower the temperature for the rest of the baking. So yeah, we'll check in on it in a couple minutes. Okay, my darlings. That's beautiful. This is scalding, you can see it's still boiling. We will put this to cool and it'll be ready to eat in a few hours. I love apple pie. And I hope you guys will try this. Let's see how beautiful and flaky the crust came out. So you see how challenge always is the first slice of pie is always difficult to get out pretty. Let's see if I can manage to get this out of here. Oh god! Left a little bit of the apples behind, so let's scoop those out because that is the best part. And a little bit of the homemade cream. And of course, on my very first episode that I made for YouTube, my microphone had to die while we were filming, and I didn't realize it until I was making it. And unfortunately, I can't redo this scene without baking a brand new pie because it was just that good that there's none left. I hope you guys enjoyed the very first episode. Please subscribe, like, comment. It will really help get this channel going. I really hope that this becomes your guys' go-to place for cooking, home decorating tips, and elegant ways to entertain. And remember, my darlings, until next time, stay fabulous.